Hello and welcome back to Knit HR's Pattern of Progress podcast. I'm Kathy Hernandez, your Knit HR consultant. And today we're talking about navigating HR consulting, going from full-time to fractional. I recently embarked on my own fractional HR journey after having worked in corporate HR roles for the last 16 years. And my guest today has started her own journey after 15 years in corporate HR roles. Today, we want to share with you some of our insights from what drove our decision to transition into fractional HR, what the pros and the cons are thus far, as well as how financial well-being have played a part in our decision, as well as how it's influencing our thoughts going forward. So today, my guest is Jessica Christopher. We call her Jess. Our paths crossed when two different companies that we worked for were acquired by Walmart back in 2019, just weeks apart. Jess has 15 years of experience within the people space and 10 years of people leadership experience supporting hypergrowth companies, scaling and supporting their biggest asset and power, their people. Jess recently started Glow Ahead Consulting to focus on helping organizations build HR and people programs and practices to support growth, and is also offering career coaching as well. She has worked across several industries with a primary focus within retail tech startups. She's ex-Gilt.com, Lacoste, Rent the Runway, Walmart, and Glossier. And I'm excited to have her join me today. So without further delay, let me go ahead and get Jess on with us. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining me. And before we jump in, would love to have you tell us a little bit about your vision for Glow Ahead Consulting and what your focus is.
Yes, thank you, Kathy, and so happy to be here. I launched Glow Ahead Consulting in mid-January of this year, and it's been full force. I can't wait to share. Currently, a lot of my time has been spent building my site, connecting with former colleagues and new connections through those former colleagues and connects, like yourself. So,
Yeah.
as you said in your intro, I offer fractional HR support as well as career coaching currently to all fields and all career levels. And my consulting on the fractional side is specific to the tech startup world. So excited to jump right in.
Great. And hopefully I got all the names of the companies right because, I think they're all so impressive. So hopefully I didn't miss any of them. We have a lot to talk about today. So I want to jump right into our topic of from full-time to fractional as the podcast title will be. And as you know, from my last podcast, I know that you listened to the one where I had Shawanda Taylor on. And one of my favorite things to know about fellow HR professionals before I even kind of get started down our topic is to learn how they got into HR. What is your accidental HR journey, if you will? And if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, like, how did you find yourself in HR? Did you choose HR? Did it choose you?
Yes, I love that question. And I would say that talented HR professionals in the field 15 years ago found me and brought me in. So they are still mentors till this day. My career journey or my pre-career journey started at the Fashion Institute of Technology. I got my bachelor's of fine arts there. In high school, I actually started going to Saturday live classes, which were specific to accessory design. So every Saturday I would go in. And just a fun fact, my grandmother was the first graduating class at FIT.
Oh,
When
wow.
there's a FIT high school as well. So we toured that, but we took figure drawing classes. She helped me build my portfolio. And so I thought I wanted to be an accessory designer, and that was it. I thought that was my career path. Through FIT, I had several amazing internships, Liz Claiborne, Kenneth Cole, Tori Birch, all within accessories. Liz Claiborne was jewelry design. I actually sketched, I still have in my portfolio, a few bracelets that were in Vogue magazine, and Jennifer Aniston was on the cover, and I laminated it. I was so proud. So I learned a ton. I really love the creative aspect. And as you know, and I'm happy to share, I'm doing some handbag designing on the side, getting back to my design roots. But we're here to talk about fractional HR and HR. And
Yeah.
at that point, I landed a role at a handbag licensee when I graduated FIT. And I was 3 months in. It was 2008 to set the stage. And I was getting things set up, in the showroom. I was helping with a lot of administrative tasks. There was, a head of finance slash head of HR slash head of ops that came into the showroom
Jack of all
and told
trades.
me about trade. exactly. And he let me know that my position was eliminated, in addition to several others as part of, a small unit. I went back to my desk. The IT manager was collecting my stuff. My manager was trying to be supportive. She was like, what, this is very insensitive and blah, blah, blah. I left, I called my best friend and my father, and I didn't know what I was going to do at that point. So, of course, I was just mourning the loss of a role in, 2008. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do next. And I had a very good friend at the time that was a fashionista, still is to this day. And she's like, there's this new website, guilt.com. They're growing. They're looking for, I think, a part time receptionist. You should apply. So I did. I got the opportunity, went to full time. I dabbled within merchandising for a bit. And the great thing about working for tech startups is that, I started in that role, and then there was a check in and they're like, how are you doing? Are you enjoying it? It was the head of men's merchandising at the time. And I said, I'm not sure if this is my path. I went to school for design. This is buying and merchandising. Don't know if this is my niche. And he responded saying, well, if it isn't, you tell me and we'll find something else for you
Oh,
within the
great.
organization, which
Yeah.
common, I would say, these days. And so the wonderful HR team had brought me on. They said, you're great with people, you're organized. I think you would be great for, a recruiting coordinator role. You could see if you like it. And it was history from there. I stayed at that company for 6.5 years, starting with recruiting, did learning and development, and then I transitioned to an HR generalist role.
Wow. So you went from fashion to HR to fractional and
Yes,
fashion. You're back to fashion. So that's
which
exciting that you're doing handbag design on the side. We'll have to hear a little bit more about that later. But so what made you, stick? What made HR stick for you? Because you've obviously been doing it now, like we said, for, nearly 15 years. And that's quite a long time to take your sidestep out of fashion.
absolutely. And I think I just ran with it. I was brought in, as I said, as a recruiting coordinator. And I think given that my first role out of college was
Mhm.
eliminated, that was jarring. And, I'm a millennial, and, I was determined to be the best employee that I could be. Um, and the great thing about growing with a growing company within recruiting is that you get exposure to every person, every department at all stages of their career and my career. And as I said, I went from recruiting to learning and development and more of a generalist role. And I love helping to support organizations grow and develop their people from onboarding all the way to offboarding, right? We should offboard the same way we do onboarding with that special touch. So that is where I was. And then, from there was no turning back. I was determined to climb the corporate ladder, and I really enjoyed managing people. And that turned into leading small HR teams, and that's evolved into fractional now. So managing myself at the time, talent management has always been a passion of mine. So all encompassing, and that's a lot of what I focus on the fractional side. So I'm proud of where my career has gone and what I've created for myself, and I just want to continue helping people in all different aspects. And that's why Glow Ahead is straddled between career coaching and fractional support for corporate clients.
Right. Yeah, I think you kind of you get hooked on the coaching people a bit, I think, in HR because it's such a large part of what you do, and sometimes it happens by accident, like depending on your level in the business. But I think once you get to the levels that we did, like that's just part of your everyday, right, is coaching people on managerial issues and how to help coach other people. And it is enjoyable, sometimes more so than being a manager yourself, or at least from my perspective. Sometimes managing large teams can certainly have its own challenges, but I always enjoyed that aspect of like helping others manage people. And yeah, that continues in the fractional side of things. You said something about managing yourself. We'll have to visit that topic towards the end about like how are we doing managing ourselves, because I always tell people, even as a fractional HR leader, like you got to manage your manager a little bit, and here's how you manage me. And so I probably need to take that lesson myself and like tell myself, like, here's how you need to manage you. So we'll revisit that towards the end.
And that's such a great comment. And I think about now reflecting, I'm like, I'm more focused on being kind to myself as my
Yeah.
own employee, and
Hmm.
I think about, making sure that I'm structuring it in a way that makes sense and that I'm, hitting my revenue goals, right?
Yeah, yeah. Gotta have those goals, right? So let's talk about fractional HR. So we both, found ourselves, as we've said, in HR for the last 15 plus years. And how do we find ourselves into fractional HR? Like why this direction for both of us? And I think it's funny, it's like very nearly at the same time, right? Like we went through this transition with Walmart like just days I felt like apart. I think it might have been a week or so apart, but it really like Eloquy was announced and then like Bare Necessities was announced like almost back to back. And it was definitely like that has its own journey. And being in startup, as you said, has so many advantages, like being able to be exposed to every level of the organization, every level of a particular job, right? All the things. I think being acquired, like that should probably be one of my other podcast topics, is like going through an acquisition and just what that feels like, from a startup to move into such a large organization. But that was quite a journey, I know, for you and for me as well. And if I said maybe, one of the things I think I said to you a while back is like maybe fate's trying to tell us something like two times in our careers we're thrown together. Like I think we gotta we gotta make sure we stay in touch.
Yes.
But as far as the transition journey, for me, it's been this time in my life where I felt like if there was ever a time to do it, like it was now, right? It was just like I just needed to do it. And I felt like if I didn't, like I never would. And I'll share a little bit more about what led to my decision, to get into fractional HR because it was one of those sort of happens hopefully once in a lifetime career situations that you don't ever want to have to go through again. But it also had so many lessons. But I want to hear what led you into fractional HR and the consulting space because these are big decisions. And neither one of us, what I know about both of us is that we're not people to leave jobs without jobs. And we typically probably wouldn't recommend that to other people, but maybe now we have a different perspective. And so would love to hear a little bit about your journey and why you chose this path.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to. And, I can categorize it maybe in a few themes. So the first word that comes to mind to me is flexibility. So being able to adjust my schedule, in a way that works for me and my family. I have a 5-year-old son, Jack, and a 4-year-old daughter named Lucy, who I love and adore, and a wonderful husband who works remotely, has a flexible schedule. So I think it's a really core time in my life to make sure that I can flex and, go read a book at my son's school or help at the school store and, be a part of the PTA, not just be on the PTA. So
Yeah.
flexibility is big. And then employee advocacy is something that's really, really important to me. And again, something I've reflected on as I've made these decisions and also have been making career coaching part of my fractional journey because it's really interesting being able to coach someone outside of the corporate setting and be real and honest and help them navigate without feeling like, maybe there's just rules and policies and procedures that I need to make sure that I'm holding true.
Mhm.
So employee advocacy, um, supporting individuals navigating through their current role and preparing them to make career transition into a new role in all aspects of the career journey. So working with them one on one and having the time to do that. Being my own boss, as we talked about. So taking the expertise that we've gained to focus on projects and process that have and sometimes haven't worked within the setting, but being educated on that with the teams we support. And as my own boss, I need to make sure that I'm acknowledging all those pieces, like, goal setting, making sure I'm rewarding myself and recognizing myself for that because I don't want to burn out,
Mhm.
as many do in a corporate setting. But most importantly, I think I'm on the path of building, a work life that works for me. So it's a lot of trial and error right now. And I'm really happy that I took the leap. And I know we'll get into the financial piece and all of that, but there was a lot of preparation. And I do agree with you that um, making sure, I have never left a job without having something lined up. I had a little bit of transition from full time to part time, and that part time, those few months helped give me time to build up my financials and build a website, and think through my position and my niche.
Mhm. Yeah. When you start thinking about it, I think, part of the thing that I experienced is like I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was like, that's why I was like, if I'm gonna do it, I just need to do it. So it's like
Yeah.
building out the plan, taking all these things that you would tell someone else to do, right? Like, do we all do, all the years, do we take our own advice? I would say not usually. As HR folks, I would say I don't usually take my own advice. Like,
A
take the
little bit
PTO.
different.
Yeah, like take the PTO, and here I need to take my own PTO, kind of thing. Um, but were there any, folks that like influenced you as you were, thinking about this journey? I know LinkedIn is just, it's a place that I always frequented, but I never stopped to sort of look in this space. And so I'm curious, were there folks that, sort of inspired you as you were planning this path for yourself?
Yes, absolutely. So, as I said, a little bit more detail. I resigned from my last head of people role. I transitioned to part time. And honestly, I was on LinkedIn when I needed to be. I was using it, leveraging it for networking, but it opened the floodgates to a lot of professionals within the HR space that specialize in fractional. I didn't know that it was such um, a large space, and so I wanted to share. I know that there's it just passed, but Transform conference, the
Mm.
annual conference in Vegas, and there's been a lot of blasts and announcements specific to fractional. So, you know, there were a few people and few messages I saw quoted like fractional is a partnership versus power dynamic, which I thought was spot on. Our workforce, like just generally the workforce right now, currently has more opportunities than people can fill. So we need to find ways to connect the two. So fractional is a great option there. And, what I've noticed and what I've seen is fractional allows you to have more impact because it removes the corporate, BS, as we say,
Mm.
and you're the expert, and, they fully acknowledge that, the people that you're supporting. Anessa Fike is someone that I had connected with early on. Just to hear about her journey, she has 12 plus years of fractional HR experience. She really built it, and she's coming out with a book actually.
I was about to say that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, if you come out, to New York, we can go together. I think it's in April, but The Revolution of Work, F the Patriarchy, and the
Mm.
Workforce It Built. I'm really excited to read it, and learn from it, and, there's a lot of people in the space that wanna make it better,
Mm.
and I think we have advocates, and, there's several podcasts I know that you and I listen to in this space, and I have, those to share as well later on in the
Yeah.
podcast if we have time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, we've definitely seen just even in, I'm sure before you've taken this leap, like we've seen contingent labor, right? Sort of have a flux, right? An influx into your business, whether it's with tech or marketing. I've seen a lot of contingent marketing folks come in and out of the businesses that I've supported. And especially in recent years, it's been super important to bring in folks in DEIB, right? Like the expertise has just been truly needed. I never claim to be anywhere near an expert in that space. Like I don't even, there's lots of things I say I know enough to be dangerous. Like I know enough to know what we should be doing. But I know that that's a learning curve for so many HR professionals because again, we know what the foundational things should be, but like when you need an expert, that's definitely an opportunity to bring in a fractional resource. Um, but you made the comment about the power dynamic, kind of being different as a consultant versus being in-house. And it certainly does, being a consultant certainly gives you more room to be that outside person looking in, right? That can more often like allow your clients to like register your insights differently than I think when you've been there for years, right? Because after you've worked with, a leader for 5 years and you're trying to give them a truth bomb, they're just like, yeah, but we did this before. And I think sometimes when you give it to a client that, you're only going to work with them for, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, even a year, like it's coming from a different place. It's not coming from what we've done or what we haven't done or what we should do. It's just like, hey, this is a completely outside perspective. Like, let me just tell you, like it is. And I think it's received very differently, because there's not all this history. So I think it's great.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's some fractional executives that have worked for, 60 plus corporations
Mhm.
in, a decade or two. So I think coming with that expertise gives comfort to leaders, right?
Yeah.
That need help.
Yeah. So for me, going back to kind of how we got here, like I said, it was a now or never situation for me. And it can sometimes feel like, as with most things, like my decision was sort of fraught with a little bit of like corporate chaos and drama. I feel like any decision, whether it's to leave or to go, to start your own business, whatever it is, like it's never without a little bit of corporate chaos and drama. And for me, though, I mentioned it really was like a once in a lifetime kind of situation that I at least hope I never have to experience again because it's quite challenging. So the company that I was working for was a large global company that embarked on expanding into the US. And I had the pleasure of being like on the front end of that journey, right? We had acquired two businesses that were fully fledged businesses, but we also were doing a startup at the same time. So, I had to have sort of two minds, like support this 300-person organization that were two different businesses trying to come together operationally. That in of itself is, bringing you two cultures together that used to be competitors, and that had its own unique challenges and adventure. But we also did a full-on bike startup, and it was just the CEO and me, and there was an offer out to somebody, and we built that group up to nearly 60 people in less than 8 9 months, something like that. And they were just like a killer team. Like they went in and they just like built sites from the ground up. They brought product in that was owned by these global companies and just built all these strategy around it, and just really, I've never seen anything like it. It was really amazing. um but this global organization, who was sort of funded by this billionaire, and it's quite all in the news in Europe, um, brought down this entire organization that impacted thousands and thousands of people across, the world, right? And Germany and the UK and in the United States and places that on places I don't even know, because we had sports businesses all over the place. And all these people were impacted. So companies either had to file for insolvency, bankruptcy, they went out of business. There were so many things that happened. And here in the US, our two acquired businesses had to either find a buyer or go insolvent. But our startup, we had to let everybody go. And that was the toughest, I think, moment in my entire career. To sit on a Zoom and have to communicate that, and to such an amazing group of people, right? And to talk about seeing people rally like afterwards, like the amount of support that they offered each other and to me, and I'm the one delivering, such a tough message. But I made that decision in sort of seeing the writing on the wall, like a little bit about a month, maybe a little less. I was like, I just don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, right? I didn't think it was going to be that, um, which, like, I don't think you could ever like you can't fathom that that's the outcome, right?
Want to
Um,
expect the worst.
yeah,
You hope for the best, but we're in
yeah,
HR. We see these things coming maybe sooner than others, right?
yeah, I think so. But again, I wouldn't have predicted what happened to be the thing that happened. But I was kind of like, this felt a little, I don't know. So from the time that I kind of made this decision, like, what, if this happens, right? If, and this being this sort of unknown, like if this business doesn't do well, um, or if they take it all back to Europe or whatever the case might be, I think I'm just gonna take the leap, right? I'm not gonna look for a job. I'm not, obviously I would, because you still got to look for work with fractional work, but I'm not gonna apply for, full-time positions. I'm just gonna do this thing. And because I couldn't stop thinking about it, I just built the website one day. I was like, all right, I'm gonna go to Squarespace and I'm just gonna and I literally within a few hours like had it all, right? I had the thing that I was gonna focus on. I had the whole website built, written a blog, like I did the thing, and I was like, okay, I created so much work for myself that I that I was like, oh wow, can I do this? But it was a long, but yet like what felt like a really quick decision. I started creating to-do lists and all the things. And, when we fast forwarded that, like, it was about 3 weeks from when I felt it. And I really thought that, like, I'm not sure what's going to happen. 3 weeks later, like we were preparing to have this call with everybody. And I stayed on to help like close out the business and whatnot, and make sure everybody got paid, which was like, the most important thing to me at the time was making sure that folks got paid. And there were so many, additional people that played a part in that to make sure that everybody got paid. But um, that's something you never think that you'll have to make sure of, right? As an HR person, like, how do we make sure everybody gets paid? But yeah, in that process, right, and in supporting the exit of the business, I was like, okay, let's do this. And thankfully, due to my network, some amazing people were willing to talk with me and, help me kind of understand what was ahead of me. And one of my former CEOs referred me to a client that I'm still working with, and forever thankful, right, for that. Because when you
Mhm.
can get your first kind, you certainly have a little more confidence that, oh yeah, this is going to work. And I know you've had quite a lot of success in the one-on-one space, and I'd love to hear a little bit about that. I know that some people you've worked with and before, and some you haven't, right?
Yeah, I'm happy to share. So, and I just want to compliment you. I mean, you didn't just try, you did it, right? We talked about that.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's the true consultant mentality, and I love it. I'm
yeah.
so happy for you. And it's scary to take a leap and
Mm,
into the unknown. And I think advice is to make sure that you're setting yourself up with a little bit of buffer, connecting with those individuals. And yeah, so I've been full force the last 7 weeks. I have now double digit clients,
it's
most of
amazing.
which are, of course, individual one on one. I have one um, retainer client that I just signed up. So it took me a bit to navigate through and figure out what that was going to look like for me, but really excited to dig in there. Um, get back into the project work. And so the individual clients, the one on one coaching span from SVP, VP, individual contributor, new people leader. And a majority of them have been people that I have worked with. I've been their HR business partner throughout my career. And so, as I was talking about building this business and what I was doing, they said, well, would you consider doing coaching, career coaching? Like, that's something I know you're passionate about. You glow when you talk about it.
Mm,
And so glow ahead, no pun intended.
yeah.
So I was excited to dig in, and then I created, thinking back to my L&D roots, my learning and development roots, creating content resources, and of course, shout out to my career coach, Dara, who is incredible. I don't think that if it was not for her and the support of, my husband, that I wouldn't have really taken the leap into fractional and really thought, okay, I can actually do this. I have the network, and I'm going to see. I'll give myself 6 to 12 months and go from there. And it's been great so far. So managing all of that has been wonderful.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, the 6 to 12 months was like in my head as well, and I now have extended that out further. I don't think I mentioned that to you, but like I have extended that out a little bit further because I set some, you know, um, expectations and some things that I think like require more time, right? And even talking to some people, they were like, don't give yourself just a year, right? Like I think it depends on obviously where you're at, and this kind of transitions well
Right.
into our next topic, which is around financial well-being. Like, that's such a big part of making the decision to be able to transition into being your own boss. And it's not always possible for everybody. I really had to sit back when I was thinking about this and convince myself that it was financially doable, right? I live in this world in my brain where I rely on no one, even though there are others who contribute, right, to my to my financial well-being and to my children's financial well-being. So it's not like, I don't have support and I don't have a partner who contributes, but it's just the way that it's my independent female mindset of like,
Yes.
I don't need anybody, and I never want to be in a position where I have to need anybody. And so that's that probably says more about my vulnerabilities than anything. But that's the space that I come from, and I'm like, okay, so like I did the whole spreadsheet. I mapped it out for the year, the next 12 months. Like if I had to be on unemployment, if I didn't have to be on unemployment, what do I have to make? What's the minimum, must do's, must haves? Like, how do we still have fun with the kids? Like, what are all the things, right? And it was a little shocking to me to see that, okay, well, I don't have to make the thing that I thought I needed to make, right? The target that I needed to make. I we could survive at a different place, because we're always all living at or within or slightly beyond our means. And it's taking that hard look of like, well, what do I really have to have, um, to just be good, right? To not have to worry. Um, and so doing that hard look was, um, a big step. And I tell people all the time, even in like career coaching, like when they're thinking about making a change, for, maybe they've been somewhere for a really long time and they're like, oh, I'm not really sure. Like, I don't know if I can make as much money somewhere else. That's where some corporate roles get you. What do they call it? The golden handcuffs, right? Like you get locked in based on like how much money you're making. You're priced out of the market. You can't really transition elsewhere unless you take a pay cut. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I always tell people like, it doesn't have to be that way. Like take a pay cut. I've taken a pay cut at least 2 to 3 times in my life, just to be able to be happy and to find the thing that suited me better. Um, and it sucked, but I got right back to where I needed to be, or where I wanted to be, really is what it was. I got back, where I needed to be is taking the pay cut. And getting to where I wanted to be was the next step, right? Yeah.
Absolutely, and something that and I'm happy to jump right into my financial
Yeah.
discoveries, but, um, it's important, yeah, to think through all of those pieces and having those discussions and, thinking through what makes sense for you, and I agree with you on all those fronts of, navigating through, what it's gonna look like, and you would think it's scary, but it's actually so comforting to
Mhm.
then get to the tail end of it and have those conversations with your partner or just, yourself.
Yourself, yeah.
Yeah, and, yeah, so the biggest awakening for me was the process of, deeper dive into my finances, the drive to continue contributing and supporting, my family financially similarly to you. My husband and I contributed equally. Um, and so my husband can actually attest to this. I wasn't able to fully take the leap and
Mm.
start reaching out and thinking through the building of my site and all of that until I mapped out the finances, for a 12-month span of time. So thinking about my revenue goals, but most importantly, my savings and allocation. So something, I quite honestly should have been doing years ago
Yeah.
in preparation for this, which I thought I was, of course, 401k and all those pieces, but here we are, and I'm learning now. And I think, this opportunity really brought me to that point where it's, I can't anticipate exactly what my annual would be,
Mhm.
but I need to set a goal for myself and make sure that I could support in the way that I wanted to as an
Yeah.
equal. So,
One thing that you've done that, if you don't mind me sharing, that I need to do at some point is you baked in like a day off in the week, or a day off that's like that doesn't belong to anybody, right? Else it belongs to you, and you get to, maybe you work, maybe you don't. That's my weekend still. Like I still have this traditional Monday through Friday, and then I do my Sunday thing, or Sunday, and then Sunday night I'm looking at email and everything, but I eventually want to get to that place where like maybe I work 4 days. Like I have no idea when that comes. I don't feel like I need it yet, but I want to get there. And I'm curious, how is that going for you? Because I know you talked about the handbag thing earlier, that's the day you're designating like time to work on that initiative. Are you sticking to it? How are you doing with that goal?
I am, and actually this week it's Tuesday and Friday because
Oh,
I'm
good.
meeting with a manufacturer tomorrow in the city, and I'm making a day out of it. I'm bringing actually a friend that I had that went to high school
Wow.
with me that graduated from FIT, had a handbag line, so she's really been a mentor in that space and someone that I meet with on a regular basis. We use Tuesdays to sketch. I'm her accountability coach.
Nice.
Um, he's into Reiki and other things. So it's really interesting, like how, we come from different fields and we're coming together, you know, with one mission. And so Tuesdays have been my day just to be creative outside of this. And things might shift, right, as I gain more clients. But it's really important, to have a break. And my coach had actually told me about, I think it's called Toggle. It's like a performance management tool
Mm,
where it takes all of the time that you spend week over week on different projects and assignments. I haven't started it yet, so I'll let you know how it goes. But just thinking about time spent during the week and if it's effective, both of us, right? We're pitching our brand, social media, thinking about, the client, the hours we're spending. It's a lot to manage. And
mm.
again, I'm spending this time testing it all out, but I want to perfect it and
Yeah.
hopefully, hire a team eventually. So we will see, but it's all about balance and figuring out what works best for you, and I block my calendar when I need to, and also, I will say, I was very fortunate in my last role when I had resigned and I went to part-time, working 25 hours a week, so, 9 to 2 or whatever it was, and having 2 to 4 to
Mm.
do whatever I wanted, which, of course, was building this, um, maybe getting a manicure, and massage here and there, but it helped me
Yeah.
transition because I was always full-time,
Mhm.
and, even my husband's like, "You're working still 40 hours." I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm working on what I wanna work on, and
Mhm.
in the time that I want to." So, it's
Yeah.
been invigorating.
Yeah, that's great. So that kind of takes us to one of the last things I wanted to talk about, which was, our learning so far. So obviously we're both learning as we go with this time management piece of it, right? Like I reserve 3 to 6 every day for myself. But I find I need to do a better job. Right? Like I'm still working on it, getting better, but I'm still working on it. But I wanted to just share a few fun facts about HR consulting that I found as I was preparing for our chat today. And I had spoke previously about like the anticipated growth rate of HR profession in the last podcast with Shwanda. And HR is expected to grow 6% in the next 10 years, which is faster than the average of any other segment in business. And in my research for this podcast, I found an article on SHRM that stated that global HR consulting market, the market is valued at $60 billion and is expected to grow at a compound annual growth rate of 7% between 2021 and 2028. So like that's even like faster than just traditional HR, and North America is the largest market for HR consulting services, followed by Europe and Asia Pacific. So, like that's just even more fascinating, right? Knowing that it's such a large business, which it's like but you don't you didn't really think it. I didn't think it was like that big.
I didn't either, and as we're, diving into it, I think, and seeing, what the network looks like on LinkedIn and other sources, like, I'm not surprised. I think,
Yeah.
flexibility comes to mind, and I think I had read, 62% of organizations in the US hire contingent workers, right? So, it's definitely a need, and I think, we also understand as HR professionals how organizations run, and we can talk through headcount, needs of the business by size and scope, and easily understand the needs for interim HR support. So
Yeah.
I think navigating through some of those things that corporations might be hesitant about,
Yeah.
non-committal, but it's not. We're bringing in a specific subset of experience that is needed,
Mhm.
and maybe not full time.
Yeah. And one of the spaces that I know you and I both agree on this because unfortunately had to do it is when a company has to downsize or restructure or whatever the case might be, and it impacts the people. It's so important to actually plan and prepare and take the time to do it right, that
Yes.
respects people, that takes care of people as much as you possibly can on the front end, right, of the people that are impacted, but then also on the back end. And I think a lot of people forget that part of it, that there's then so much support that still needs to be provided for those that are still there, for the leaders. There is survivor's guilt, if you will, to use, I know it's coined a different term now, but like that's really what it is. The people that are like, I made it and I don't know why my coworker didn't, who I've worked with for 10 years or whatever. And that's one of the areas that I think you told me you may want to specialize a little bit in, right? Or at least put
Yeah.
yourself out there for.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, I'm very passionate about that. As I said, the full scope of onboarding, offboarding.
Mhm.
To your point, I think a lot of organizations don't do a great job at the offboarding and, figuring out what that transitional support looks like from a career development, perspective. So providing coaching for, those that were impacted. And then again, similarly for those, as you said, or have stayed and haven't been impacted, but are inundated with, you know, multiple jobs that they need to do. They have the survivor's guilt. They're helping to support individuals on their team that were impacted. And it's a lot of change management
Yeah.
and a lot of focus should be spent from HR teams on that. And I feel like, again, HR teams are inundated with all those changes, making sure if people are getting paid, whether that's severance or not. I mean, it's a lot going on during that time. And I feel like a lot of organizations I've worked at, it always feels rushed.
Hmm.
And it's a very personal decision, of course, when managers are involved in making those decisions or not. And then they
Or
have
not.
to
Yeah.
justify, right? So it's really challenging, and I think that's a space, from a fractional consultant perspective that I really wanna dig into.
Hmm.
So, putting a project plan together now, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna pitch it to you and others, of course,
Yeah.
but it's really important to offboard appropriately and help
Yeah.
support the team that isn't offboarding.
Yeah, yeah. And that's just, again, a great way that I think fractional can be of a support to a business. A couple more fun facts that I found transitioning back to that. I found this blog. I'm not going to go to the whole thing, but there are like 15 things that, sort of like you should know about, being an HR consultant or being fractional. And one of them is that people take fewer holidays, as they called it, as an HR consultant. And I'm like, well, yeah, of course. I was already bad at taking PTO. Now I'm going to be even worse. But like, again, I have to be super intentional about that. But I think that's interesting that was like literally the top of the list. But building trust and workload, takes time too. So like if you're dropping in and out of companies, right, yes, you might have their trust as an expert, but it still takes time, just like in any business, to build trust with the people that you'll be working with. Knowing when to give up, fresh perspectives can lead to better solutions than persevering with perfectionism. Uh, so I don't think that that's in reference to like know when to give up as a consultant, like in terms of your business, but like maybe know when to like quit pushing on an issue.
Now it could happen in the future with a client, right? A potential
Mhm.
client.
Exactly. Yep. Um, and note taking is crucial for both personal, professional memory and communication. I mean, the amount of information that you're trying to take in so quickly it's just ratcheted up like even more than if you're starting a new job, right? Like the amount of information I took in of my new client, I mean, just reading the consumption, it was like so much. And I'm a writer, because I do retain that more than when I type. I mean, I've retained both, but like writing is so I have a
Yeah.
big fat notebook that sits right next to me that I'm on my second one just in like 3 months. It's one of those 5 subject notebooks. It's nice and big. Um, but that's one of the things that it mentioned, like be prepared to I'm trying out Notion right now too, and I'm not really sure whether Notion is it for me if I want to go back to OneNote, but trying to organize myself with electronic notes as well. And one of the things that you mentioned that they call out is like preparing for cash flow gaps, right? Like we talked about that, making sure that you're prepared for those because they will happen. And so managing finances is essential. So clearly we were thinking, right? to think about those things. And then the last thing that I wanted to pull out of there was a consultant provides expert advice and should offer alternative solutions, not just agree with our clients, right? Like it's, you can give them one option or not even an option, you can give them one way of doing things, but if they don't want to go that way, being able to give them other options or to be like, okay, we can certainly do whatever it is that you want to do, but being able to be flexible, but giving that like, you should know if we do this,
Right.
right?
Cause and effect of everything and multiple
Mhm.
options, I think sometimes can be overwhelming, but it's very important to weigh out the pros and cons and understand, right, what the client's needs are,
Yeah.
and budget constraints and all those things that we would deal with
Yeah.
on the corporate side full time too.
Yeah, for sure. So I'd love to hear about your learning so far. Like obviously sharing those are learnings from someone else that I felt like resonated with me and have resonated with the conversation that we've had today. But what are just the few things that you feel like have stood out for you in terms of your key takeaways, that we know you still have some ways to go here, but you've done a lot in such a short amount of time. I mean, it's not even the end of March, and you've already got 10 clients and a retainer. I mean, that's huge.
Oh my
So
gosh,
congratulations.
yeah, so excited.
Yeah.
But thank you, Kathy. Yeah, I think I have a lot of learnings and I'm excited to share them and also just advice, right? It's
Mm,
multi-purpose advice for anybody that's thinking about transitioning to fractional. Um, and so the best advice that I have received, honestly, is simple. It's, give yourself time and, have those networking calls, ask those tough questions, dig into the needs of the business, ask those tough questions to clients and yeah, all potential clients, keeping a contact list, setting up, a Google Calendar, a Calendly meeting link is so helpful when you're
mm,
solo. um, Doing what you say you will, when you
mm,
say you'll follow up or make a connection, it's a promise you're making to that individual and that potential client. So, you could potentially lose someone if you're not making a good impression up front. It might not be the right time now, but it could be in the future. So some of my services are catered to certain times of the year. So, the performance cycles, right? They start and
mm,
end at different times for different organizations, companies' physical year you need to take into account, and also, the employee population. So a lot of times I'm pitching to clients and I'm like, oh, this would be wonderful for Q2, Q3, let's connect. So it's really setting the stage, which is helpful, right? If you end with one client and then for the next quarter you have one or two lined up. And same goes with individual clients. They might be contemplating taking a leap, change in their career, but you'll be top of mind, when they're officially deciding to start investing in themselves and helping to start their search. Support system. So consulting can be lonely, right? And
yeah.
I've always valued, and I know you have too, the HR teammates that you've had and while working in corporate. So I feel like I've naturally built a work related support system over the last few weeks. And it's helped me tremendously in more ways than I could have imagined. It brought us together, back together again too.
Yeah.
And I think it's wonderful to be able to level set and bounce ideas off of each other in a focused way of things you want to discuss and implement yourself.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and I would say finally, just getting out of your comfort zone, starting a social media page, sitting on a panel, going on a podcast. I mean,
Those are
all
the
those
worst. Getting out of your comfort zone, right? Like, yeah.
comfort zone.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, and I don't know if we'll dive into this or have time, but just resources. I
Mhm.
think for me, it's, books that I've been reading recently. We mentioned podcasts. So there is a podcast I think you and I listen to, like HR Besties. It's,
Yeah.
you can laugh and have a cocktail. And I think
Yeah.
us in our field can really relate. I Hated Here podcast. I listen to that a ton. Happy Yusuf is incredible. I listen to it for inspiration and motivation and education within fractional too. And
Mhm.
then my favorite of all time is Armchair Expert. And that's my calm when I want to learn about people. And I'm a huge autobiography fan. So just, I think it's important, right? When we're thinking about flexibility, work life balance, like really giving yourself time to factor in the education piece too and
Yeah.
network.
Yeah. And there's still so much education. I mean, yeah, we're sitting on 15, 16 years of experience in HR, but there's still so much to learn, right? I mean, it changes, but it doesn't change all the time. It's a lot of mindset shifting too that you got to keep up with. And yeah, tons there's no short supply of information out there, right? No short supply. So I do go
Yeah,
ahead.
it's nice resources that compile information for you in a way that makes sense. And, there's not enough time.
Yeah, I have a reading bookmark and I like pop a bunch of stuff in there and I'm like, oh, I'll eventually get to all of these things. I'm a skimmer and then I'll skim and like, throw it in there to go back and read in more detail. But yeah, I think, that's all lots of great advice. The thing that sticks out for me most is the getting out of your comfort zone, right? Like obviously doing this is not my natural thing, right? It's certainly not a place that I ever thought I would be, on the internet in this way. Um, but I love talking about HR. I'm an HR nerd. Um, so why not? And that's what someone that I work with a company called Get More HR Clients. His name is Ben, and I told him I was like, oh, I'm thinking about doing a podcast. He's like, just do it. Like, stop talking about it, just do it. And so I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do it. So I did it and I did it without like doing video. And then he's like, okay, great. Now you did it. Now go do one with video. It's like, okay, well, I'll go do that. So I'm at
Here,
this place. Yeah. And here I am. And here you are with me. And so I'm at this place where I think I've said it to you and I said it to most people. I'm just like throwing it all out there and see like what sticks. And some of it's fun and some of it's not fun. And the stuff that's not fun, I'm like, okay, I'll do some more of that later. And the stuff that is fun, I do a little more of. So, and it's nice. It keeps it interesting. It's different than what a typical day-to-day in corporate would look like to be able to mix up the fractional work and then, this kind of stuff on the side. So,
fractional.
yeah, fractional fun. Yeah. So again, we've talked about so much today. We've covered a lot of ground. I truly hope you'll come back a few months down the road and kind of share what your journey has been, from where you're at now, just a couple of months into, where you're at, maybe at like the half year mark or something, and tell us how it's been going and what new things you have learned.
I would love that. I would love that. And similarly to you, like I'm trying to so many different things currently, and I'm living in the present and making it happen. So it's really invigorating. I took a Peloton class this morning,
Oh
and
yeah.
I need a Robin session. And she's like, what you can with what you got, right? So it's
Mhm.
like focusing on what you want to do and just do it.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Kathy. This was
Yeah,
awesome part of
of
this. And
course.
I absolutely will come back and report back and hold myself accountable for my goals.
Yeah, it's great. Yes. And I love, that like you said, you have to build sort of your own community now. Like you have to have your people, Shawanda is one of the most favorite people in my HR journey that I have in my professional life and personal life. And she and I like schedule touch bases. Like let's make sure we still have a touch base out there. And I would say the same, for us. We've met many times already, but like having that recurring so that you do have just that other person to be able to either bounce ideas off of or see how it's going for them. And, maybe like you're doing something that I can try, because that is the one thing that I will share, is that there is, as you said earlier, no short supply of work, right? And everyone that I've spoken to, and I have to imagine you've had the same experience, that is doing something similar, they're so free with all of the information, right? Because there's nothing to hold on to, right? It's not like you're trying to take their clients, like everybody has their niche. And I have yet to run into somebody who is mine and, or yours. And there's just so many people doing so many different things. Another lady that I linked in with recently, like her space is dental, like of all places. It's like I think her company's name is Clinical HR, and like she does consulting just for like dental, practices. And I'm like, talk about a niche, like that's, so interesting. So I love that about so far about consultants is that everyone is just so open to sharing their stories, their journeys, and their learnings. And so I hope those of you that do listen, even if you're just our friends and family, tune in for our future episodes. And definitely we'll have Jess back down the road. So check out Glow Ahead Consulting at glowaheadconsulting.com, as well as on Instagram. And I hope you have a great rest of the week, Jess.
You too, Kathy. Thanks so much.